The wagered prize, the alien arena, was filled with noise, cheers, and the smell of smoke. Creatures from many worlds sat in the high stone seats, their eyes glowing in different colors. It was not just a place for sport, it was a place for blood, for wagers, for pride. The night was special because a new prize had been brought forward, one that made the crowd roar even louder. The guards pushed a figure into the light, chains rattling against the stone floor. It was a girl, tall and graceful, with alien features so strange yet beautiful that the crowd gasped. Her skin shimmered faintly, her eyes glowing with fear and hidden strength. She was not there by choice. She had been wagered like an object, her life traded for entertainment. The announcer shouted in a booming voice that carried through the arena, "Tonight, the prize is not gold, not jewels, but her." The crowd roared, creatures banging their fists, wings or claws in approval. Every eye turned to the challengers waiting in the shadows. But then laughter began to rise. From the far side of the arena, one figure stepped into the light. He was not massive, not armored, not terrifying. He was only human. A ripple of shock moved across the arena, followed by mocking laughter. "Impossible," one alien hissed. "He will die in seconds," another chuckled. "A human thinks he can fight here? This will be amusing." But the human did not flinch. His steps calm, his gaze steady. He looked at the alien girl for only a moment, and something in his eyes made her heart stop. It was not greed, not desire, not cruelty. It was something she had never seen before. Resolve. The announcer sneered as he introduced him. "A human dares to fight for the prize. But the wager is clear. He must face the champions, and if he survives, she is his." The crowd laughed again, already smelling human blood. The girl lowered her head, shame and fear mixing together. She had been treated as a prize all her life, an object of value but never of choice. Now another fool had come to claim her, or so she thought. But as she raised her eyes once more, she saw the human standing tall, his shoulders straight, though the world mocked him. Something inside her whispered, "This one is different." The human spoke no words. He did not argue with the crowd. He did not boast. He simply tightened his fists, his eyes never leaving the open gates where the first alien champion waited. The air grew heavy. The torches around the arena burned brighter. Even the crowd sensed something unusual, though they refused to admit it. The girl's chains felt colder around her wrists, but for the first time she felt a spark of hope she could not explain. The gates clanged. The first roar echoed through the arena. The challenger was coming, massive steps shaking the ground. The crowd rose to its feet, ready to see blood spill. But still, the human stood without fear, his gaze locked, his breath steady. The girl could not look away from him. She did not know his name. She did not know why he was here. But in her heart, she realized one truth. This was no ordinary man. This was someone who might fight, not just for a prize, but for something greater. The crowd cheered louder. The announcer raised his hand, and the wager began. The human clenched his fists tighter. The alien girl's heart pounded, and the entire arena leaned forward in suspense. The story of the night was about to be written, and it would begin with a single strike. The impossible challenge. The sound of the gate grinding open echoed like thunder across the arena. Chains rattled, metal scraped stone, and a roar shook the air. From the shadows stepped the first challenger, a creature taller than 3 men, with skin like iron and tusks curling from its mouth. The crowd went wild, slamming fists and claws together, chanting for blood. The announcer's voice thundered. "The wager begins. The human must defeat 3 champions, one after another. Only then will he claim the prize." The alien girl's heart sank. She had seen those champions before, and none had ever been defeated. The first one alone had broken bones of warriors stronger than steel. The second was a beast with claws sharp enough to cut stone. And the third, he was the undefeated arena champion, feared across many worlds. No being had survived against him. For a human to face all 3, it was madness. The human, however, did not tremble. He stood in the sand with steady breath, his fists clenched, his eyes calm. The crowd mocked him again, shouting words in 100 alien tongues. "Meat!" One yelled, "He will be meat for the beasts." Another hissed, "Humans are weak, this will be quick." But some voices in the crowd grew quieter, uneasy. They remembered the way the human had stared, the way he had not flinched. The first challenger stomped forward, each step sinking deep into the sand. Its muscles bulged like living stone. Its eyes burned with hunger. It raised a massive hammer of bone and metal, heavier than the human's entire body. The alien girl felt her chains tremble with her hands. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. The human shifted slightly, lowering his stance. He did not have armor. He did not have weapons. Only his speed, his will, and his strange human mind. The beast roared and swung the hammer down, shaking the ground. The crowd cheered for death. But dust rose, and the human was gone. He had rolled away at the last second, fast like lightning. The hammer smashed the earth, leaving a crater. Gasps rippled through the stands. The beast swung again, faster this time, but the human ducked. He darted forward, striking the beast's leg with his fist. It was not a strike of strength, but of precision. The beast stumbled, surprised. The crowd fell silent for a moment. Their laughter caught in their throats. "Impossible," one alien muttered. The human's movements were not wild. They were calculated. He was reading the beast, finding its weaknesses. The alien girl's eyes widened, her breath catching. She whispered to herself, "He fights differently." "Not like them." The beast roared louder, swinging in rage, but rage made it clumsy. The human slipped past its swings, striking again and again. His knuckles bled. His body shook, but his eyes never lost focus. Then, with one final strike to the joint of its leg, the beast collapsed with a roar that shook the arena. The crowd exploded, half in cheers, half in fury. A human had drawn first blood. The announcer tried to shout over the noise, his voice almost broken with disbelief. "One champion falls, but two remain. He cannot last, he cannot endure." The gates rumbled again. The second challenger entered. This one was different. It walked on four limbs, its body sleek, covered in scales that shimmered. Its claws gleamed sharp like blades, its mouth filled with rows of fangs. It moved with terrifying speed, faster than the last. The human wiped blood from his lip and raised his fists again. The girl felt her chest tighten, her hope mixing with fear. He had survived the first, but the second was worse, far worse. The crowd leaned forward, hungry to see human flesh torn apart. Some whispered now, unsure if they wanted him to lose or win. The suspense grew heavy, like a storm ready to break. The beast circled him, its claws dragging lines into the sand. The human turned slowly, eyes never leaving it. The girl realized something. He was smiling, only faintly, but smiling. Not because he wanted to kill, but because he had accepted the impossible challenge. He was ready. The crowd held its breath as the beast leaped, claws flashing, and the human moved, faster than before. The true test had only begun. First blood. The second challenger moved like a shadow. Its body slid across the sand with speed no human should ever match. Every step was silent, every claw sharp enough to slice steel. The crowd leaned forward, hungry for the human's death. They wanted to see him torn apart, to see his body broken. But the human stood calm, his chest rising and falling slowly, his eyes locked on the beast. The alien girl trembled in her chains. She knew this creature. It had ended warriors twice. The human's size in seconds. It did not fight with brute strength. It fought with speed and cunning. The crowd called it the Blade Beast because its claws never missed their mark. She whispered to herself, "He cannot win this one, not this one." Yet she could not look away. The beast lunged, claws flashing. The air itself seemed to split apart as the strike came down. But the human twisted just enough, the claws slicing only his shirt, not his flesh. Gasps rang through the stands. The beast struck again, faster, forcing the human back step by step. Dust swirled around them as the claws cut lines in the sand. Each attack came closer, closer. One slip would mean death. The human's arm was grazed, blood spilling down his skin. The crowd roared in approval, chanting for the beast. Kill him. Tear him. Their voices thundered. The announcer shouted above them. See, the human bleeds. He will not last another breath. The alien girl's eyes burned as she watched his blood fall. She wanted to look away, but her heart whispered something strange. Even bleeding, even pushed back, he was not broken. The beast leaped high, coming down with both claws aimed for his chest. The crowd rose, certain of the kill. But at the last second, the human dropped low. Rolling beneath the strike, the beast slammed into the ground. Claws stuck deep in the sand for a heartbeat. It was only a moment, but it was enough. The human rose, his fists clenched tight, his teeth gritted. He drove his fist straight into the beast's ribs. The sound echoed, a crack like stone breaking. The crowd fell silent for a breath. The beast staggered back, gasping. No one had ever struck it so directly. No one had ever made it bleed, but now, dark fluid dripped from its side where the human's fist had landed. The girl's eyes widened, her lips parted. He made it bleed. She whispered, almost in disbelief, it was the first blood. The impossible had happened. The beast howled, fury replacing its cunning. It attacked wildly now, every strike filled with rage. The human dodged, slipped, ducked, his body screaming with pain. Every movement cost him blood. Every breath was heavier, but his eyes burned brighter. He was not fighting only to win. He was fighting for something the crowd could not understand. The alien girl felt her heart racing, her chains heavy on her wrists. She had been called a prize, an object, less than life itself. But in this moment, she saw something she had never seen before. Someone was fighting not to own her, but to free her. The realization made her chest tighten, her throat ache. The human struck again. Another blow to the beast's wounded side. The creature screamed, stumbling, blood spilling across the sand. The crowd's cheers turned to silence, disbelief spreading like fire. The announcer's voice cracked. The beast bleeds. The human. He made it bleed. The silence broke into chaos. Some roared with anger. Some shouted with awe. The impossible had been done. The fight was no longer entertainment. It was legend. The beast staggered, fury fading into fear for the first time. The human stood, blood covering his own body, chest rising with heavy breaths. He did not smile. He did not boast. He only raised his fists again, ready for more. The girl's eyes filled with something she could not name hope. The human had bled, but he had also drawn blood. For the first time, she believed he might survive. For the first time, she wanted him to survive. The beast snarled, preparing for another attack. The crowd screamed louder than ever, unable to decide if they were watching victory or death. The fight was far from over, but history had already been written with that first strike. The human had proved what no one believed against all odds. A human could make even monsters bleed. Asterisk, the price of pain. The blade beast was not finished, though its ribs bled, though its strength faltered. Its eyes still burned with rage. It lunged again, claws flashing like lightning, faster than before. The human dodged once, twice, but on the third strike, the claws caught his shoulder. Blood sprayed across the sand, red against the golden dust. The crowd roared with approval, their voices like thunder. The human staggered back, his arm hanging, heavy, pain shooting through his body, but he did not fall. He gritted his teeth, his stance wide, his eyes sharp. Every muscle screamed, yet he stayed on his feet. The alien girl gasped, her hands pulling against her chains. She felt her own body twist. With his pain, as if the wound had cut her too. The beast circled him, blood dripping from its wound. But now smiling, it thought the human could no longer resist. The announcer shouted, "The human bleeds. He cannot last. The beast will finish him now." The crowd cheered wildly, chanting for the kill. But the human's eyes did not dim. They burned brighter, as if pain had only sharpened him. The beast struck again, claws aimed at his chest. Human raised his injured arm, taking the blow, the claws digging deep. Blood poured down, his knees buckled, the crowd screamed in triumph, but with his other fist, the human drove a punch into the beast's jaw. The crack echoed through the arena. The beast stumbled back, dazed, and the crowd fell silent for a heartbeat. The girl's breath caught in her throat. This man, bleeding and broken, still fought back. He had no armor, no weapons, yet he turned every wound into a reason to strike harder. She whispered to herself, "Why? Why does he keep fighting?" And then she realized he was not fighting for the wager, not for the prize. He was fighting because surrender was not in him. Pain was only the price he was willing to pay. The beast roared and attacked again, slashing. Wildly, the human dodged some, but others cut his skin, leaving lines of red across his chest and arms. Each wound made the crowd cheer louder, but with every strike, the beast grew slower, weaker. Bleeding more from its side, the human endured, taking the pain, forcing himself to stay standing. The arena floor turned red with blood, both his and the beast's. Finally, the beast lunged, its claws raised high for the killing strike. The human did not step back, he stepped forward. He let the claws cut into his arm, but at the same moment, he drove his knee into the beast's chest. The sound was like a drum, the beast choking on its breath. Then with one last burst of strength, the human slammed his fist into its throat. The beast collapsed, writhing, choking, its claws twitching in the sand. The crowd fell into silence. Stunned, the human stood, covered in blood, shaking, but alive. The announcer's voice cracked, almost afraid. 2 champions fall. Only one remains, the champion of champions. The crowd erupted again. But this time it was not pure laughter. It was anger, awe, confusion. They had seen something they never believed possible. A human who refused to die. A human who paid every price of pain and still stood tall. The alien girl's heart raced, tears stinging her eyes. Her whole life she had been told she was nothing but property, a wager, a prize. But this human, he was breaking himself in front of the galaxy just to keep going. He did not look at her as a prize. He looked at her as if she was worth bleeding for, and though her chains were still locked, in that moment, she felt something she had never felt before, hope. The human raised his head, his body trembling, his breaths ragged. He stared at the gate of the final challenger. The arena's champion waited there. Unseen in the shadows, the human wiped blood from his eyes. His fist still clenched, the girl whispered, "He should be dead." But he's still standing. The price of pain was heavy, but he had paid it without fear. The final challenge was coming, and the galaxy would soon see if pain could truly break a human. Against all odds, the arena fell into silence as the second beast collapsed into the dust. The human stood covered in wounds, his chest heaving, his body trembling from blood loss, but he did not fall. He raised his head and looked toward the final gate. Everyone in the crowd held their breath, for they all knew what waited there. The ground shook as the gate began to rise. Chains rattled, drums thundered, and the announcer's voice boomed. "Now comes the champion of champions, the one undefeated, the one who has ended hundreds, the one no warrior escapes alive." From the darkness stepped a giant unlike the others. It wore armor forged from the bones of fallen warriors. Its body towered over the human, its arms thick like steel pillars. In one hand it carried a blade longer than the human's entire height. The crowd exploded into cheers, chanting the champion's name again and again. The alien girl's heart sank. She had seen this champion fight before, and no challenger had lasted longer than a few strikes. The human had already paid the price of pain. His body bleeding, his strength drained. How could he fight this monster? "This god of the arena," she whispered, almost pleading. "Don't do this. Please don't." But the human stepped forward anyway. There was no fear in his eyes, only fire. The champion lowered its blade, pointing it at the human like a finger of death. The human tightened his fists, his broken arm hanging at his side. his good arm ready. The crowd laughed at the sight. A blade against bare hands, but deep inside, some felt a strange unease. The human had done the impossible twice already. Could he do it again? The announcer raised his hand, his voice shaking. Now, the final battle begins. May the champion end this madness. The champion charged, its steps like thunder, its blade slicing through the air. The human dove aside, the blade cutting a trench in the sand where he had stood. The crowd roared, the noise shaking the stone walls. The girl squeezed her chain so tight her skin burned. Her eyes fixed on the human. The champion struck again and again, each swing powerful enough to crush stone. The human dodged, barely escaping death each time. His body was slowing, his wounds stealing his strength. But his mind was sharp, his eyes watching, learning. He saw patterns, tiny mistakes in the champion's movement. He was not fighting with power. He was fighting with will and intelligence. The champion roared, slamming its blade down with all its strength. The human rolled forward, closer instead of back. The blade struck the ground, stuck for a split second. The human lipped, his fist smashing into the champion's jaw. The crowd gasped as the giant staggered. It did not fall, but it stumbled, and for the first time, it bled. A thin line of blood ran down its lip. The arena erupted into chaos. No! One alien shouted. Impossible! Screamed another. The champion growled, furious at being touched, its blade swinging in rage. The human was caught by the edge, the strike slashing across his chest. He cried out, blood pouring, stumbling. Back, the girl screamed, her voice lost in the storm of the crowd. He fell to his knees, clutching his wound. The champion raised its blade for the killing strike. The crowd cheered for the end, certain it was over. But then the human raised his head, his teeth clenched, his eyes blazing. With trembling legs he stood again, his fists rising once more. The crowd fell silent in shock. Even the champion paused for a heartbeat, watching the human rise again. The alien girl's chest burned with something she had never felt before. This was not just strength, not just survival. It was defiance, it was spirit, it was humanity. The human whispered through blood and pain. I'm not done. The champion roared and charged again. The human stepped forward to meet it. Against all odds, against all reason. The sand flew beneath their feet, the clash shaking the arena. Every eye was locked on the battle, every voice caught in their throat. The human had no weapon, no armor, no chance. And yet he still fought, still stood, still defied. The girl's chains felt weaker, her hope stronger. For the first time she believed, truly believed, that even gods could fall, and that a human, broken and bleeding, might be the one to make it happen. Victory claimed. The arena shook as the human and the champion clashed. The giant swung its massive blade, each strike like thunder, each swing meant to end a life. The human ducked, rolled, stumbled, his body dripping with blood. Every breath was fire in his chest. Every step felt like the last he could take, yet he moved forward, not back. His eyes locked on the giant. The crowd screamed louder with every swing, half cheering for the champion, half in disbelief that the human was still alive. No one had ever lasted this long against the arena's god. The announcer's voice trembled as he tried to shout, "The champion will finish it now." The human cannot, but even he could not finish his words, for the human did something no one expected. He ran straight at the champion, closing the distance. The giant's blade came down in a blur. The human twisted, the blade cutting across his back, blood flying. He cried out but did not fall. Instead he grabbed the champion's arm, holding on with all his strength. The crowd gasped. Thousands of voices silenced at once. The human climbed the giant's body like a wounded animal, refusing death. The champion roared, thrashing, trying to shake him off. The human's fists pounded again and again into its head, each strike weaker than the last. But his will was stronger than steel. The alien girl's eyes widened, tears spilling down her cheeks. She whispered, "Don't stop, please don't stop." The champion staggered. blood running from its mouth. The human raised his fist one final time, his body shaking with exhaustion, and he struck the giant with everything left in him. The sound echoed through the arena like a breaking mountain. The champion froze, its knees buckling. Its massive blade slipped from its grip and fell into the sand with a crash. The giant toppled forward, crashing down, the earth trembling beneath its weight. Dust exploded into the air, covering the arena in a golden cloud. The crowd was silent, not a cheer, not a laugh, only shock through the dust. The human staggered to his feet. He swayed, his body broken, blood covering every inch of him, but he stood. His fists were still clenched, his eyes still burning. The announcer dropped his voice, whispering like a man who had seen a ghost. The champion has fallen. The human has won. Chaos erupted. Some aliens screamed in rage, others shouted in awe. Some threw their wagers to the ground. Furious that a human had defeated their gods, others cried out, "Impossible! This is not real." But it was real. The proof lay in the sand. The champion of champions, undefeated for years, was dead at the hands of a human. The alien girl could not breathe, her chest tight with disbelief in something more. Her chains rattled as she took a step forward. Her knees trembling, the human turned to her, his body swaying, barely able to stand. But he walked to her anyway, every step of victory over pain. The guards reached to stop him, but the crowd was too shaken to act. No one dared touch him now. Not after what they had seen. The human reached her, his bloody hands pulling at her chains. He forced them open, the metal snapping under his strength and will. For the first time in her life, she was free. The girl stared at him, her lips trembling. "You won. You actually won," she whispered. The human's eyes softened, his voice hoarse. "I didn't fight for a prize. I fought because no one deserves to be caged." Her knees gave way, tears falling as she collapsed into his arms. The crowd roared in chaos, the announcer unable to speak. Some called for guards, others demanded justice. But none dared approach the human. He had claimed the impossible victory. He had turned a wager into legend. The girl clung to him, whispering words only he could hear. "You are not just human. You are more." The arena shook with voices, but above all the noise, one truth had been written. The human had faced 3 champions, suffered every wound, paid every price of pain, and still he had won. The wager was over. The prize was claimed. But it was not just victory. It was freedom. It was defiance. It was the birth of something greater. And the galaxy would never forget the night a human stood against all odds and triumphed. Beyond the wager, the dust of the fallen champion still hung in the air. The crowd was a storm of voices, some screaming in fury, some chanting in awe. Guards rushed to the edges of the arena, unsure whether to attack or kneel. The announcer stood, frozen, his voice lost, the words of the night broken. Nothing like this had ever happened. No one had ever defeated all 3 champions, and no one had expected a human to do it. The human stood swaying, blood dripping from every wound. His breath came ragged, but his eyes still burned with the same fire. Beside him, the alien girls. Chains lay broken in the sand. She touched her wrists, staring at the marks where metal had bound her all her life. For the first time, her skin was free. She looked at him, her lips trembling. "You freed me when you could have claimed me," she whispered. He met her gaze, his voice raw. "I didn't fight to own you. I fought so you could choose." The words struck her deeper than any chain ever had. No one had ever given her choice. No one had ever given her freedom. She felt her chest ache, her eyes burning with tears. The crowd roared louder, furious at the idea that their wager had been turned into defiance. Guards began to move, spears raised, their orders clear. Kill the human before he could leave, silence the legend before. It spread. The human turned, pulling the girl gently behind him, his fists clenched again. Though his body could barely stand, the girl felt her heart twist. He would fight again. Even broken, even dying, but something strange happened. The crowd, split in anger and awe, began to change. Voices rose, not just of fury but of admiration. Some shouted, "Kill him!" But others shouted, "Let him go, he earned it." The arena was no longer united. It was divided by the impossible. The announcer's voice cracked, desperate. "This cannot be allowed. He is only human. This breaks every law." But his words were drowned out by the roar of thousands. The human tightened his jaw, his body trembling, but his will unbroken. He looked at the girl and whispered, "Run with me." Her breath caught. But she nodded, without doubt, without fear. Together they moved. Stumbling toward the broken gates of the arena, guards rushed. But the human raised the fallen champion's blade with shaking hands. He swung once, sparks flying as it cut through spears. The crowd erupted, half in cheers, half in screams. The girl held his arm, pulling him forward, guiding him through the chaos. For the first time, she was not a prize being dragged. She was choosing her own path. Outside the arena, the night air was cold and free. Stars stretched above them, endless and bright. The human fell to his knees, his strength nearly gone. The girl knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she tried to hold his wounds. Tears ran down her cheeks as she whispered, "Why? Why risk everything for me?" His eyes closed, his breath faint, because no one believed a human could. "But I had to show them," he whispered. Her tears fell onto his skin, her voice breaking. "You showed me too. You showed me I am more than a prize." Behind them, the arena roared with chaos, but ahead stretched the open world. The girl looked at the horizon, then back at the broken man who had freed her. She realized the truth that would never leave her heart. Strength was not measured by weapons, by size, or by power. Strength was the will to rise again when everything said, "You should fall." And humans carried that strength in every breath, in every heartbeat. The galaxy would never understand until it was too late. But she understood now, completely. She placed her hand on his, her voice steady even through tears. "You are not my owner, you are my choice." The human opened his eyes, faint but still burning. He gave a weak smile. The first true smile of the night. The girl helped him to his feet. And together, wounded but unbroken, they walked into the stars. Behind them, legends were already being born. The story of the human who fought against all odds, who turned a wager into freedom, and beside him, the girl who had once been a prize, but now was something greater, a partner, a believer, a witness to what humanity truly was. And in her heart, she whispered the words that would echo forever. "Against all odds you won me, not as a prize but as the one I chose."